Well, prisons have become one of the flashpoints of the virus, with riots breaking out in Italy and thousands of inmates being freed in Iran. The Prison Officers Association has thousands of members across the UK's prison system, and their General Secretary, Steve Gillan, joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us today. How worried are you about what coronavirus could mean for our prisons?
Well, this is unprecedented, and it's not just for our prisoners, it's for the staff, our brave workforce, PRA members that work in prisons up and down the country, and indeed in the NHS setting. I've been around the criminal justice system now for 30 years, and this is one of the most critical issues going. And I'm pleased to say that we're working constructively with government and with employer. I've had meetings with the Director General, Phil Coppell, and I spoke to him on the phone yesterday, and we're being updated as regular as can be, because it's a moving situation.
And of course, by the nature of prisons, you have a large number of people in relatively close proximity to each other. Iran has freed tens of thousands of prisoners because of this fear of coronavirus spreading through our prisons. Is that the kind of thing that's in the contingency plans in the UK? Well,
not as yet, but previous governments have done what is called an executive release of prisoners. That may come in the future to free up spaces in prisons.
And what does it mean? Does that mean like a temporary release where they're monitored and then brought back in later?
It could mean that, or that the Secretary of State has the powers to look at low-risk category prisoners and just release them as that executive release.
Towards the end of their sentence, for example?
It could well be. So, for example, at the moment in the open estate, which is known as the Category D estate, there's about 4,000 prisoners in that. Now, at the moment, some prisoners are being isolated who are showing signs of the virus. No one, to my knowledge, as of this morning, has actually been tested positive, but they are being isolated in single-cell accommodation. Now, we all know that prisons are grossly overcrowded. That can only happen for a period of time. Staff as well, my members, PRA members, I mean, prison officers and operational support grades and all those who work in prisons are sometimes wholly not recognised for the valuable work that they do. And this is an opportunity to recognise the braveness of those frontline staff who themselves could be put at risk. Now, I'm pleased to say that we're working hand in glove with the employer and government. I've written to Robert Buckland offering him a round table, not just with ourselves, but with the Police Federation.
Has he replied to you yet?
Well, he's not responded as yet, but I'm hoping in the coming days that he does, because we've said this is an opportunity for government, such as him, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, and the Prime Minister himself, to talk to us about our knowledge of the criminal justice system.
I mean, a couple of things just to unpick from what you were saying there. Firstly, this idea that prisoners, obviously, I guess, if you show signs of coronavirus or other illness, will have to self-isolate, and only so many single vacancy cells there. Can you see other buildings, for example, being taken over to be used to isolate people?
It's not been discussed with us as yet, but we've got more meetings coming in the coming weeks, and I suppose this is a movable feast. If it takes off in prisons, then...
Which it has elsewhere?
Absolutely. Everywhere will have to be looked at. We don't want a situation like Italy. And I think communication with the men and women prisoners and the youngsters in our care is paramount. We've got to converse with them properly. We've got to converse with the families and make sure that everybody's safe. Because you're right, other buildings could be looked at. So, for example, in the past, when the prison service has been overcrowded, they've had to commandeer prison ships and things like that and make them safe and so forth. So I wouldn't rule anything out at this moment in time, but the welfare of those in our care is paramount. The welfare of staff is paramount. People, we can't just send prisoners home to self-isolate. That's one of those occupations, along with the NHS, like nurses. You can't just say, go home, because they've got to be at work. So we'll be looking for investment from the government as well. But I can talk about those things directly with the Secretary of State when he comes to meet me.
Will you need more prison officers, potentially, then, if a large number of people are going to be at home?
There is no doubt in my mind that we will need... We've been saying that for the last 10 years anyway, but I don't want to make...
In particular, with this situation that we're in?
Yeah, I don't want to make political points out of it, but we are under-resourced. You know, I want a proper package put in place for prison officers, operational support grades. We might have to have a budget from government that increases for overtime and things like that, as and when...
You need more money. ...staff
fall sick, because they will. There is no doubt about that at the moment. Some people are self-isolating the staff. The figures that I got as of yesterday was, in total, 113 nationally, and there's some 75 prisoners in isolation at this moment, although none have been tested positive as yet.
And then just finally, you were talking about the welfare of prisoners as well. I mean, in Italy, we've seen riots breaking out. We've seen, very sadly, some deaths because of drug overdoses. If people are being forced to stay on their own, visits are being restricted, this is going to have a big impact on a group of people, a section of the population, who already may have mental health problems.
Sophie, you're absolutely right. There's many vulnerable cases within prisons of mental health, as you said, of drug addiction, even prisoners that are aged 70 and over. That's increasing, so we've got about 2,000 of them in the population at the moment. Of course, nobody wants to see disturbances and riots of the scale that we've seen in Italy. And that's why communication, proper screening, education of both staff and prisoners in relation to this is paramount. And it's why my union has taken on board to work constructively with government and the employer, all employers, because we are the largest trade union in the criminal justice sector, and we take that very responsibly. And I'm sure with the correct resources, things will get bad. There's no doubt about that. But it's preparing prisoners, talking to them to make sure they understand why certain things have been done. And it might be done separately in different establishments. I don't think there'll be a blanket ban on things or visits or things like that, but it could be introduced gradually depending on how severe it is at certain prisons.
Some big questions there that need addressing. Thank you very much for coming on the programme and outlining what the prison service is doing to prepare. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Sophie.